And welcome back to Mixed Media. We're back at it for another episode of your favorite podcast, your favorite weekly podcast, happening every Friday at 7 p.m. And I'm really proud of Mixed Media. I'm really proud of how we've come along. It's been a while. I don't know if I can say it's a new podcast anymore, even though all our little marketing things say all new podcast. Maybe not so all new anymore, but still fun and fresh in my mind.
We started in what, March?
Yeah, something like that. So we've had
5 months. Yeah,
24. I think this is episode number 24. Yeah, like five and so months. It's pretty awesome. I'd like to thank everyone out there who is watching for tuning in, whether you're watching in post or not. One thing I'll say is, you guys who are on Rumble, you guys are really quiet, but you love our stuff. I've noticed, especially recently, an influx of people on Rumble. That's really awesome. So please let us know in the comment who you are, and join our Discord. That's a cool place to interact with us. And yeah, we would just love to hear more from the Rumble crowd out there. And so with that, I guess we'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella. Remember to wear the hat today. Got that awesome logo, ariella.co. Yeah, Ben, who are you?
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
And where are you now?
So I moved out to LA last week, although I guess so I'm living in Northridge, so I've been told that I can't really say, even though it's technically LA City, that there's a difference between the city and the valley. So I live in the San Fernando Valley, and you have to say if you live in the valley, not in the city, even though it's technically the city. So
is it for the honor of the people in the city or for the honor of the people in the valley?
I really don't know. I've just been told that I can't say that I live in the city.
Ah, gotcha. Hold on. I've got my villain lighting going. I have nowhere else to put this light but to uplight myself, unfortunately. But it makes me look a little bit like a villain sometimes.
Wearing all black doesn't help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how are you adjusting though? You haven't started class yet, right? Or anything like that?
Yeah. My classes start on Monday, so still trying to figure out where I am basically and all of that stuff. Where I live, like directly where I live, is kind of a nice area, but it's kind of a weird mix of like urban and suburban that's kind of hard. Not like anything I've seen on the East Coast. Yeah,
that sounds really bizarre. It's like LA is like this endless sprawl, right? Like that's just infinite. Yeah. It's an interesting place, and you're kind of moving there at an interesting time too. So,
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I move out here, and then like the day after I got here, they basically announced that everything was going to be online anyway. So I'm out here, for grad school, but doing it online, even though the school is literally like 10 feet away from me. So,
the apple you cannot eat.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're Mixed Media. We're a weekly podcast happening every Friday at 7 p.m. I don't know if I said that already. And we talk about art, anything to do with the arts space.
Should maybe mention now that I'm on Pacific time that it's 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, 7 o'clock Eastern. If you're on the West Coast, it's a little bit earlier. Just a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about art in general, whether it's art philosophy, what's going on, the news of the day, business, reviewing things, interviewing people. We kind of done it all at this point, and hopefully next week we'll have all three of us. There are usually 3 hosts on this show, and if we have all 3 of us next week, we might try out a new format. And what I want from our audience is to tell us if you like it, because the best thing that you can do for us more than anything else is to give us some feedback. So if you like the new format that's going to happen next week, just let us know, and hopefully we'll have all 3 of us to try that. And yeah, I guess I'll go on with my topic for this week. So this week I'll be talking about the beginnings of being a director. And it's actually one of those hard things that's very hard to learn because of two things. One, there's a million and one ways to do it. You know, there's it's not the most defined role. You know, if you're a DP, you at least know you're confined to the camera, right? Whereas if you're a director, you're directing the whole show, there's a million and one ways to go about it. There's not really one process. The second reason is because indie film directing is going to be completely different from what you'll find in the industry. I'm going to be coming at it from an indie film perspective. I've not done anything even close to industry stuff. And also, I'm not an expert, so this is just kind of my thoughts. And it really is a 101, and it's mostly about leadership is what I'm going to be talking about. It's I think the things about directing that are hardest to learn are the things that aren't actually the filmmaking itself, or at least can be harder to learn for some people, at least. So I kind of want to talk about those sort of interpersonal aspects of directing.
Yeah, it's interesting too that I think for film composers, you know, everyone's always saying, and from a little bit of personal experience, the act of composing is really only half of what you do. It's, you know, all these other kind of intangible networking skills, and then, you know, to get jobs and then to lead the people that who are on your team, or the musicians that you're working with. Those are things that are, I think it's kind of a parallel, you know, skills that aren't as directly like based on creating art that are still really important to the job.
Yeah, if you're not able to work with a team, to get a team around you, if you're doing a collaborative art form, then it's kind of futile. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are. If you need other people in order to complete your project, then you're going to have to be able to deal with people well, or else it doesn't matter how awesome and creative you are. You will not get the job done. So yeah, I actually want to give a shout out to Scott before I started. Scott was on the show. He was a composer, been interviewed, and he gave me the idea for doing this episode. So shout out to Scott. I don't know if he's watching right now. It doesn't look like he would be. But shout out to you. Thank you for giving me this idea. If you want to give us some more episode ideas, just link is in the description to our Discord. All right, so I think the first thing is, what is the job of the director? Actually, I'll even backtrack it further, because this is a question I had before I even started to understand film, you know, production, you know, when I was just learning about film at the very beginning. It's hard for me to understand how the director fit in with the rest of the hierarchy of everything going on. If you look at a hierarchy chart, it may confuse you that the director is not the top on the hierarchy chart, but then everything seems to be underneath him or her, right? And I'll just explain that real quick. So a director can either be working for himself or working for another entity. So whether it's a person or a company or whatever, right? So you could be a contracted director, or you can be, you know, this could be your own project, and that you are your own boss for. For a lot of indie directors, that's going to be you, right? You're going to be, for a lot of you, not all of you, that's going to be you. You have put the money together, you've gained the funding, maybe you have investors, but the way that you've structured everything, you've maintained full, you know, majority status on your project. That's most indie films, I would say. Sometimes you are hired by a writer, so this happens obviously with crew, right? So you're more like crew in your relationship to the project. So recently I was director of photography on a production, and the director wrote the thing. So he wrote the thing, he funded the thing out of his own pocket. So he was the director at the top of everything, and he contracted me, the director of photography, to do the photography for the production. So that's more of your relationship. Now, if you're a director in that situation, you've likely been hired by a production company that's pushing you out to a project, or you've picked up someone else's script and you've pitched your vision for that script, well, whatever it is. I think less people are going to be in that camp because you're more towards the industry side of things, and I can't really help you. So the director, you'll often see is underneath producer. But oftentimes, if you own the project, you are also essentially a producer. And producer is a completely amorphous title that I'm not going to get into right now. Many people can be producers. Cool. So what is your job? If your title is director, you have a job. So you have two, I think, big things. Your job is to manage the vision. So manage the vision, whether it was given to you, whether the script was given to you, or it's your own idea, you've got to manage it. You are the manager of the vision, the abstract thing. And you have to manage the vision makers. In film, you cannot create a film alone. Well, you can. Yeah, well, I shouldn't say you cannot. You literally can, but you're not watching this if you're doing a one-man band sort of thing. And also, bless you, that's crazy. I've known people to do it, though, but it's insane. Yeah, so manage the vision.
It's really hard to do that with, like, actors, too, you know? Because you still have to, like, unless you're going to shoot yourself. I mean, some
people will even make themselves the one and only character as well. And that sounds really lonely, too. Not judging, but I think that would drive me insane.
It sounds difficult to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to check your own takes, your own performances in camera. I don't even want to think about it. It's giving me anxiety. But yeah, so you have to manage your vision makers. So the people who are going to be adding their own input. It's a multidisciplinary art form. There is music, there is sound, there is picture, there is wardrobe, makeup, hair. Like it goes on forever. Color, all of post-production is a whole other animal, you know. So like, it's a multidisciplinary subject, meaning you're going to be watching over many different types of creatives work in their wheelhouse for your vision, right? The vision that you're managing, which puts you in a interesting situation where you may not be the expert about something, you know, and you will not be the expert about maybe, you know, most of it, because I mean most people can only have enough time to really soak in, you know, one aspect of that. For me, it's probably you know, the photography end of things, the cinematography ends of things, and the writing aspect of things. Everything else I can do, but I wouldn't hire myself to do it, right? Especially things like wardrobe and stuff like that. You know, I wouldn't trust me with that at all. So you're going to be in a position where you will have all the power over other people and their decision making, and you should have all the power. Let me be clear. You need to absorb and retain all of that power. But you're going to have a lot of other people who are more powerful in the sense that they know how to do the thing better than you do in their respective fields, right? They're more creatively gifted in those aspects. So that's an interesting dynamic, and that causes the forever wars between the director and the different aspects of filmmaking, and you get all those lovely dramatic stories of fighting between directors and other creatives. Okay, so where do we start? I'm going to start with leadership, and that's what this is mostly going to be about. And I think being a good leader is more about yourself than it is going to be about other people. And I'm going to clarify that real quick. So what do I mean? I mean, you yourself have to be a good person in order to run a good set. That's where you start. It starts before you even think about the creative. It starts with how good are you at, actually, how well do you know yourself? That's the first question. Know thyself, right? So how well do you know yourself? Well do you know your strengths, your weaknesses, what you can and can't handle, where you're likely to have stress points when you're on set, pre-set, post-set, whatever. You need to know yourself very well. And this is actually very difficult, you know? I mean, everyone thinks they have self-reflection, right? But if you go and survey the world, you probably come to the conclusion yourself that not many people self-reflect well. Well, don't just stop there. Self-reflect even more about yourself, right? To help humanity out. So reflect on yourself. That's the first thing that you need to do. And you need to own your flaws, and you need to own your personality type or personality. You need to understand how you interpret information and how you communicate information. So for me, I know I have a tendency to speak when I am conversing with about anything, really. If I'm having an important conversation, I get very technical with my words. So my words mean a specific thing to a point where I'll like backtrack and I'll like correct myself, to be even more clear, even if it's going to be 10 times more verbose, right? I probably do that on this podcast. And so I know that, I do that, and I know that that's not always efficient, right? So I know if I'm on set and I'm asked to do X, Y, Z, then, and I need to make this decision right now, I know that I have to be careful because I may say X and it might acquire, because I'm being very technical with my language, when I say I need a half stop down on the exposure, right, or something like that. That's a weird example, but I mean literally I need a half stop down on the exposure, not expose me down to where I'm happy, right? Whereas some directors might not know what a half stop means, and they'll say, I want a half stop down, and then the DP thinks, I'm going to expose this down to where I think it should be, right? So I know I speak precisely like that. I won't use those words unless I mean them, right? So that's just a really example. So particulars like that, really examine yourself. Next time you're directing something for fun, or like you're working on a set, really look at your own behavioral mannerisms and think about how they interplay with other people on set and stuff like that. Next, look at those weaknesses that you've assessed and start to work on being better, right? Like, don't just leave yourself there and know your weaknesses. Try to fill those gaps. Start virtue building, right? So like, don't just be like, wow, I really suck at communicating. So I'm gonna worm my way around it. Well, yeah, you might have to need some workarounds while you're trying to get better at communicating, but don't stop trying to get good at communicating, right? Like, you still need you need that skill still as a director, and you want the process to be as smooth as possible. Remember, the less time you're dealing with set drama, the more time your head is in your own world. I think this is the best way to phrase it. I can't remember. Some director said it this way. Basically that, what a director always wants to do is be in the universe that is actively being created in front of him. And that is, I deeply feel that, So if I'm on the set of Operation First Light, a film I worked on with Ben, I'd rather not talk to anyone, and I'd rather just focus on what's actually, unfolding in front of me. And I want to be absorbed in my own world so I can make sure the vision is being taken care of while I'm there. The reality is that's not going to happen, especially on an indie production, 100%, right? And it doesn't even happen on professional productions, 100%. It's never going to happen. It's an unfortunate reality. You're going to have to tend to things that have nothing to do with the universe that you're trying to create, right? But you want to maximize that. So the less drama, confusion, all this kind of stuff that you have on set, the more you can sit inside your universe as you create it, which is where you probably want to be. So work on those virtues. So if you lose your temper, that is going to be a very important virtue to manage. You can't be losing your temper all the time on set. That's not okay. You will not get very far. And then keep going. Like, don't stop at, I've solved my temper problem on set, but I habitually lie to my crew to get what I want done. Well, don't do that either, So continue on and recognize where your flaws are. Because if you're not honest with your crew, they will know. Like, you are not as smart as you think you are. You are not as smart as you think you are. Everyone can see through your crap. So don't be that guy without integrity. You are leading the ship. You want everyone else to be honest with you, so be honest with them. Obviously, there's going to be, like, candor and stuff like that, but you're not going to, like, tell someone, I think you should quit your job forever. That's not a nice thing to say, but you know, the honesty that gets the job done. Let's see. So yeah, that's all that. So then we move on to, okay, now I am thinking about myself more. I'm taking care of myself more. But now I've got a date tomorrow. I'm waking up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. To read the script again, and then I don't know, go through some ritual to try to make myself feel better before I see all the eyes looking at me, demanding that I know exactly what to do right now. You know, when you're doing that, you're going to have to know how to deal with people as well. So not just know yourself, but okay, how do I know the people around you? Well, hopefully you've got a good amount of people around you who you know. So sometimes you have control over that, sometimes you don't. So as much as you can have control over that, I heavily implore you that oftentimes it's better to get the person on your team that you have confidence in as a person with integrity, that you know what they can do, that you can communicate effectively with. It's better to get those people on board than to get the person that's a little bit better, right? Obviously, there's going to be a balance, you know, between different interests, but really don't discount the fact that you know people, and you want a lot of those people on your set, as many as you can. But you're not going to know all of them. So as much as you can know the people who are on your set, make sure you care about them. You know, like that can't go unsaid. So like if you're in between projects, like, I don't know, like reach out to them or something, you know, talk to people. It's good to keep in touch and keep on the same wavelength about life, so that when it comes to time that you aren't completely different people to each other. So what about other people, acquaintances or people you don't know? So you might be a director and you have a sound guy who is just the local sound guy. You have no idea how to work with him. You have no idea really if he knows what he's doing. He's giving you examples, but that's never really assurance to a director, of course. You're always nervous. So what I would suggest is this is more of a me thing, the way I tend to do things. So you may not find that this works for you. So buyer beware. But I would pick a heuristic. So why heuristics are useful? They are heuristics because they allow you to try to tackle a problem quickly without going through the normal rigor of thinking about something and mulling over a problem, but get to a approximate solution. They also can backfire many ways, but that's not relevant for here. But I would use a personality heuristic. That's kind of how I approach things. So, Ben, have you heard of personality types and things like that? I'm sure.
Yeah, like Myers-Briggs sort of things, or
yeah, things like that. Yeah. So there's plenty of them. There's like, Big Five, Myers-Briggs. There's like a really ancient one where there's 4 types, or 4 or 6, something like that. There's a lot of debate about like, okay, what's the relative merit of these things? Well, we don't care, right? Because this is a heuristical thing. So it's not about, you're not going to use these things to type people actually, right? You're not going to like be like, you're this type, so I'm going to treat you like this. That's not what you want to do. That would be bad. You would be simplifying people way too much. But what it can do is help you to understand what might be the quickest route to a solution if you're in a bind. So I'll give you an example. So I like Myers-Briggs because of the way I think it's the easiest way I can graft people into different boxes. It sounds really weird, but I promise you it's for a good purpose. It's not to generalize people. It allows me to put people in different boxes, and throughout the years I've come to notice that these different places tend to very well describe very general properties of people, right? So there's the dispute about, okay, well, in psychology today, like the Big Five personality is the thing that is considered to be the empirically superior personality type thing. I don't have time to learn Big Five. I know Myers-Briggs, so I'm going to go with that, right? So, and so I first try to know myself. So I am an ENTP. I probably have been since roughly around high school, which gives me a certain understanding of myself. If I were to look at it literally, look at the different properties of ENTPs literally, of course, I would disagree with certain aspects of things, or things I would say, a little bit more, a little bit less. Well, I'm an individual, right? I'm not an ENTP unit, right? But I can recognize a lot of, if not all, of the weaknesses described in the ENTP subset. I definitely embody, right? And so I can use that to help put words to things I might not understand about myself. So I'll give you an example. So ENTPs are easily distracted, like we're squirrels, basically. And there's a reason why we're squirrels. But actually, before learning about my personality type, it would have been very difficult for me to describe to someone else what it feels like to be in my mind, which obviously is going to be hard to describe. You only know your own mind, right? Until you contrast it with like how other people describe their minds, and you're like, oh, wait, I think very differently from you. My internal conversations and my internal home is very differently constructed than yours, which is fine. And I can say, it's not just that I'm a squirrel, because that's not really what it is. It looks like that from the outside, especially when I was younger. And again, we're trying to build virtue, so not trying to stay like that for my entire life. I can definitely say that it's like that because of the way my brain processes information. So I tend to look possibilities as an explosion of possibilities of like, okay, I get this input. There's a whole bunch of association that happens, and then I tend to pick apart each possibility logically until I come down to something that I'm happy with, which might be never. So that is and this happens whether it's what I'm going to eat tomorrow or the deepest life quandaries. It's the same sort of pattern of thinking that just throws my brain into, I start with like, what am I going to eat tomorrow? And I end with the philosophy of culinary art and what I should be eating in a more abstract way, because I'm trying to get a solution to what I should eat tomorrow, right? So that's me, and that comes with a bunch of drawbacks. So I know that. So I would say, it's kind of fun too. So like, I would say, if you're going to go this route, find something that you can interpret very easily. I caution again against being overly broad with it, or just being too confident in your assessments, or anything like that. But you can look at that person that you will not have a chance to have a coffee with before you go on set. Maybe it's the AC or something like that. And the AC is freaking the hell out because the DP is throwing a tantrum and refuses to come on set. And the AC is like, I don't know what to do, freaking out, whatever, or something like that, or whatever the heck problem comes up. You've never talked to that AC, and unfortunately that's the reality sometimes. And that person comes up to you. Maybe you've observed that they're probably an INFP or something like that. And perhaps you can try to get in that person's mind and have empathy for how they're feeling and thinking in that moment, so that you can soothe them as quickly as possible, both because you care about that person and also because you need to solve the problem, right? There's no way around it. So for that INFP, that might mean say, listen, like, I know that you're freaking out. You're doing the best job that you can without the DP being here. I'm going to handle this because they are responsible for the camera. You do the things that you know to do, and then you go get coffee and take a break, right? That might be the right solution for the INFP. Whereas with, like, I don't know, me, I'm not going to be happy with that, because I'm going to be like, yo, give me a solution now, or else I'm going to be freaking out for literally give me the step-by-step of like what exactly is going to happen, or else I'm going to be thinking about all the different things, and I'm going to be stressed the hell out and tired before we even start, right? Or something like that, just really random examples. And that could give you better communication and leadership on a dynamic atmosphere where you're not necessarily knowing everyone super well. of course, you're going to replace those things with good relationships whenever possible, right? So there's that. So the last thing I'll go here with is the things that I think are the most important to do when you become the director, right? You don't become the director on set. Well, not normally, unless you're doing like some crazy fast-paced like commercial directing or something like that, and you're like replacing some director for some commercial shoot or something like that. But normally you're not just thrust into something, right? If you're doing something narrative, you've probably been working on it for like, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. So you're not just thrust into it. So if you have a team, you have to do something first. And this is for yourself, and this is for the respect of everyone there, and this is so that they respect you. You need to have a conversation, you need to sit everyone down, and you need to set down the terms of engagement the first conversation that you have. The first conversation. You can't be having ambiguity about really important things about how you want to run not just your set, but the entire creative process. The set part is going to be like, a minuscule part of the entire process. It's quite amazing, actually, relatively speaking, how long each part of the process is. You want to set those standards early on. So if you have producers working for you as a director, which probably a lot of indie producers or indie directors are going to have, or you have other organizational people like your AD, you're going to have your probably other creatives early on board, like your composer or something like that. You want to sit everyone down.
It'd be great if you have your composer on early. Normally that's, especially in industry, that it tends to be like one of the last people you have.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. I like to have as many creatives that are going to be heading large departments on as early as possible, just to set the tone.
I think composers would prefer to be on earlier, most of them. At least I certainly would, but that's generally not the reality, especially like the highest levels. You kind of like, unless you're hiring John Williams or Hans Zimmer. Yeah, so when you bring everyone on board, set the ground rules first. For me, I highly recommend that the first ground rule you set is zero tolerance policy for what I'll call douchebaggery. I have a zero tolerance policy for people being bad people, and I mean anything from, abusing someone or touching someone inappropriately, anything in that realm, all the way to, I don't know, whether you habitually ignore someone who I've told you that it needs to be your partner in XYZ pursuit or something like that. None of that. And you have to be strong. Like there's no one else who's going to be responsible for what you do except for you at the end of the day, which is where a lot of the friction comes from on set, right? Because you are ultimately the one who has to answer for whether the film is good or bad, right? You can always say, well, I mean, I didn't really get a handle on this or that, but doesn't matter after you spent all that money and time and it doesn't matter anymore, right? So really every decision you make is just paramountly important, which is part of the stress of being a director. It's extremely stressful. And I think a lot of crew need to understand how stressful that is too, to help the director as well. Sometimes the decisions being made aren't not well thought out. They're just strong decisions, right? For whatever reason, and they still may be wrong decisions, but got to be a good director, right? Yeah, so you've got to be strong. So zero tolerance on shenanigans, I would recommend, and set that tone outright and make it known that if you see a smidgen, a hint of that you are liable to go ballistic on them. So, whatever consequence that is available to you, you will execute. Is what I would recommend with that kind of stuff. The other thing I would recommend setting a tone for is, because you are responsible ultimately for everything, I think that it would be irresponsible if you unduly handed over heavily creative decisions to your team without coming through you first. What the heck is the point? This happens. There are a lot of films where you can tell that it feels more like a collection of voices rather than one voice, which typically doesn't go very well.
Like they're almost competing thoughts about what the central idea of what you're making is, right? The easiest way to solve that is to just route a lot of that high-level decision-making through yourself. And that's going to make your time burden go up. And that's fine. That's your job, you know? I would say that up front because people are not going to know what you want to know or don't want to know. There are some directors who are like, don't tell me about that or I'll freak out or something like that. Or so make sure people understand the terms of engagement. So even if you're going to be that person who wants to know as little as possible and you focus on the things that you positively command, right? At least make that known to your top level creatives so that they can engage with you the way that you want to be engaged with. But I would recommend saying something like, you know, if this is going to change the tone, the story, you know, in any significant way, I want to know about it. And also make it clear that doesn't mean you're going to change it. That just means you want to know about it. That's all. You'd be surprised what people will change behind the director's back. I've seen it firsthand. And I always think to myself, I don't know if that's going to turn out well for you. Or, you know, maybe the director won't notice and it'll come out in final production that this does not quite align with the vision very well. And the director's not going to know where it came from. So you might get away with it. But, I mean, it's better for you, right? It makes you look better. And at least you can always blame the director at the end of the day for being bad. And the final thing I would set the tone for sure is candidness. You know, a lot of artsy people are very sensitive about what they're making, which is, you should be, right? Like, you care about what you're making most of the time. So, you know, you're going to feel a lot of ways about different things. And people are going to say things that are going to make you go, do you even understand what you're asking me to do? You know, do you even understand, like, what I went through to, like, get this story to be exactly this? And especially for directors, if you wrote the thing, you've been on this story for probably, you know, it might be several years. The story has been in your head, replaying, and now it has to be manifest. And all of a sudden someone's being like, I think it's just not working this way. And you're going to freak out. And that's a natural reaction. But the better thing is for that person to tell you what might catastrophically ruin your film that you never thought about in the way that that person's thinking about it. The better thing for you to do is to create an atmosphere where people are comfortable talking to each other and talking to you. If you don't do that, I think you're in big trouble. I've seen also that, where people just don't feel comfortable suggesting XYZ. I hope I haven't created atmospheres like that where people don't feel comfortable talking to me. But I try to say up front, everything is game for telling me. You know, I'd rather you tell me than, you know, hold this in and it becomes like a problem for you, like you just can't get past this roadblock, or it becomes a problem for me too, you know, later, because I'm like, wait a second, that character decision doesn't really make sense. And accept that opinion from anywhere. So if your composer is telling you a story note, take the note, take it, you know. If your AC is like, you know, there's boundaries here, because obviously you don't want, you know, everyone talking to you, or else you're going to get information overload. But if your AC is like, I think this lighting doesn't match the way we did it yesterday, right? And I've talked to the DP, and he or she says that it matches what it's yesterday, but I'm really certain that the color is just off, right? Don't just immediately say, listen to the DP, get out of my face. Take it in. And maybe you're not going to go and challenge the DP directly. I wouldn't recommend that either. But you be the liaison, right, between the AC and the DP on that particular problem. You know, like, take those stances. This is much more applicable to indie stuff. With more corporate stuff, you may not even have the ability to talk to certain people. There are actually some union rules about who can talk to you about what, which is quite insane. But
wow.
Yeah, it's
like on set sort of thing, or like,
yeah,
does that extend into post?
I don't know about post, but I know there's some on-set rules about who can talk to what level about what.
Wow.
I'm sure that stuff gets broken all the time, but there's always this, it's like a chilling effect over like whether you want to gamble or not, I'm sure, or something like that. But I would say if you're not bound by those things, ignore those things and just, I don't see the point in stuff like that. Then the second overarching thing, I'm almost done here, is to recognize good behavior. My goodness, I see this a lot too, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it as well. Like, I just don't notice something, but make it your job to notice things. A film day is 12 hours minimum. A lot of times it's 12 hours. That's a long time. And a lot of people are giving it their creative all the entire time. Like, they're literally working their brain creatively for 12 hours. If you can't find it in yourself to say one good thing about something that someone's doing and affirm them in something that they're doing, either you've got someone really bad and you've got really big problems on your hand, or, you're probably not looking hard enough, right? And just make it your job to notice, because no one else will. The producers are not going to. They're too busy. Heads of departments might be too busy. You are busy as hell, but you're the only person whose positive affirmation means literally everything, right? Do that. And the third thing is to be decisive, and with the caveat of what I said before, but also be inclusive, right? So be decisive, but be inclusive. Meaning, and this is something I can be really bad at. So, and that's partly because of the way my mind works. So someone will be like, we don't have this location anymore. We got to figure this out, right? And we need to figure it out within the next 10 minutes, or else we're going to be so off schedule you don't even want to think about it, right? That might be your AD talking to you, right, on set. Or even before set, you might be, oh man, like, you've been mulling over this story decision for the past 10 months or something like that, and you still don't have the answer, but you need the story to be locked. You need the script to be locked to proceed to the next thing. You really can't be ambivalent about these things. You can't let them endlessly eat away at you, because you just can't. There's constraints. So be decisive and be specific. Be very specific. That's literally your job. So don't make the costume person come up to you and be like, I see you want period wardrobe, but do you want that period wardrobe to be hyper realistic, or do you want it to be sort of more like a fantastical version of the period stuff, right? And don't just say fantastical and walk away, right? that costume person might be very well happy to go off and do their own thing with just that little note, or they may not be, and they might be in crazy overload and might not be comfortable telling you that they're overloaded with all the decisions they have to make. If you know what you want, say what you want. So articulate it. I want just a little bit more elegant than the average person would actually have in this era, and I want more layers than they would actually have for depth of costume. And give me some color contrast between the set color and the clothing color in these particular kinds of scenes. And I really love the idea, because I've really been thinking about this character in the color blue, and maybe I don't really know why, but I just always thought that this color blue really suits this character, And if they don't like it, invite them to tell you. So that's the inclusive part, And when they tell you, really think about it. Don't just say no. So yeah, that's the basics of the interpersonal aspects of directing. I think it's really just about managing the vision and managing the vision makers. And you have to manage yourself. That's control of self is probably 75% of the game. You have to know yourself well, you have to manage your stress well, you have to manage what you can handle really well, know your weaknesses, your what you're good at, and then you need to know how best you can communicate with those around you. And I think everything else, all the creative aspects of things, that's a whole other, how to direct well and directing actors and all that kind of stuff. That is a whole other can of worms that we might open another day. So, yeah, that's my segment.
Yeah, you're reminding me, bringing back some memories. I've worked on 2 sets, not related to like post-production composing. And first one was for doing sound on set for one of Irving's films, and then I also did some sound for another student short film. You're bringing back memories of that, and good things and not so good things.
Yes.
I'll avoid going into specifics, but not everyone understands that leadership as well as you do. So people out there listening, take note.
Yeah, I will also say that I was definitely a lot less like thoughtful back then too. So I'm sure I made probably 1,000,001 mistakes. I know I can even name mistakes, but that's what you should be doing too. Like don't just think about your creative mistakes. Think also about what you said to that person in that one time. And was that really were you being a good person is what matters the most. First and foremost. But second, was that the best way to go about things? And I have regrets. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe one day we have to talk about, from the other end of that, from someone beneath the director. I was just literally the other night watching the kind of infamous, maybe not infamous, kind of maybe I guess depending on your point of view, infamous or famous clip from the James Horner's TED Talk back in I think 2004, and he's talking about what's it like to score a major motion picture, and basically he says on there, discusses it for a while, but he says that most of the art is not in writing the notes, but in artfully convincing the director that their vision is not as good as for their vision for the music is not as good as what you want, but you don't want them to know that you're saying that, basically.
Of course.
Yeah. It's a fun talk.
And I would recommend, I wouldn't just tell the director your vision sucks. I mean, I can imagine something that would make my day worse than hearing, man, your vision really is bad, But, also you have to say things too, Right.
Well, I think that's what he means by the artfulness of it. You suggest something else, and you kind of want to make the composer or the director come to like what you have in your head without them knowing that you're sort of going against their own vision. But you're convincing that your vision is actually what they really want, have in mind. I think that's what he means. And obviously, Horner was one of the best composers of the late 90s to up to his untimely death I want to say 6 years ago now, 2014 15. So
yeah, anyway,
that's another conversation.
But before we move on, I just the last thing, this is a random pet peeve. If you have people working with you for free, you are in their undying, you are not working for yourself in full anymore. If people are volunteering for you, you got to treat every last one of those people, super well. And the least you can do, you have to spend money on your crew. I don't you have to, there's no way around it. And the reason why I say that is minimally, you have to feed them. It just, the thing that irks me the most is if there's a set and people are working for free and you are making them buy food, I don't know. It just that just really irks me. Don't do that. Don't be that person. If you have to save $100 to feed everyone pizza, even if it's the lowest quality pizza, at least offer them that option, please. And water. This has happened to me. You have to bring water for everyone, not just yourself. Water for everyone, paid or not paid. This is part of the production process. If you don't have water, there's something wrong with you.